Good morning and welcome back. This is our second session, our second panel of the day, and it gives me great pleasure to have this panel. We, as I said previously, I was in Dubai in December at GITEX, and it was very moving to see Israeli and UAE officials on stage together. And so this is very focused on taking this new relationship further and what will happen in the aftermath. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to hand over to Dorian, who is going to moderate this panel, and he will introduce himself and the panel. So thank you very much, Dorian. Please take it away.
Thanks so much, Johnny. Everyone hears me okay? My name is Dorian Barak. I'm a fund manager and one of the co-founders of the UAE Israel Business Council, and it's a real pleasure to join the team today. We have a distinguished panel of speakers, including Dr. Sabah al-Binali, who's a venture partner and head of the Gulf region for OurCrowd, and brings with him a wealth of experience and knowledge around asset management, investments, and fintech. Dr. Bhaskar Dasgupta, or Doctor, I understand he has multiple doctorates, Director of Business Development at Abu Dhabi Global Markets, better known as ADGM, which is the premier jurisdiction in Abu Dhabi. Salvatore Lavallo, the head of foreign direct investments at the Abu Dhabi Investment Office, ADIO, which is at the forefront of attracting investment to Abu Dhabi. And Zingher, my dear friend, managing director of Blue Laurel, which is an advisory group, and CEO of Dowsat, a wellness solution based in the Arabian Gulf, a technology company. It's a real pleasure to have all of you here with us today. Thank you very much for joining. If I may begin with Dr. Sabah. Dr. Sabah, as someone who's part and parcel of the local fintech ecosystem in the UAE, could you share with us a brief portrait of the fintech market in the region? Are we seeing technology developed in the region? Are we seeing rapid adoption here? Regulatory accommodation? What are we seeing these days?
I think financial services is one of the largest sectors in the region, and it's understandable that fintech would therefore follow that. The most interesting thing about fintech is not the technologies, but the business models and advances in the business models. And then we're seeing the fintech sector, out of all the VC sectors, it's the largest here in the UAE, and we see rapid advancement. We see multiple regulatory systems that are advancing between ADGM and there's DIFC, and the UAE Central Bank is also quite active. So I think that if you're looking at the UAE, the fintech is probably quite fertile, quite advanced with a lot of support.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Let me ask you something else, which I think is relevant to this as well. I understand that the DMCC trade zone in Dubai has recently created a framework for the establishment of blockchain and crypto businesses. Are you seeing a lot of fintech companies coming to the UAE? Is it a homegrown solution we're seeing here? How do you characterize the players that you're seeing, playing a significant role in the local market?
Okay, so the UAE I see has been a home for many people from around the world to set up businesses and build their businesses even before tech came to the forefront. So we're actually as we hear from Dr. Bhaskar and Salvatore later, it's not just the regulatory framework, it's the support. It makes it an attractive place to come, but not just for fintech, but for across the VC ecosystem. But fintech in particular, because UAE is well known as a financial services hub, and so we see a lot. If you look at the fintech space, at the actual founders, by far they're outnumber Emiratis. There's a lot, and it's growing on a monthly basis.
Excellent. Dr. Dasgupta, Dr. Bhaskar Dasgupta, ADGM, Abu Dhabi Global Markets, is the premier jurisdiction for establishing technology and financial oriented businesses here in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi. What is the level of activity you're seeing with technology companies and specifically fintech companies at ADGM? Is a real ecosystem developing?
Well,
I think we're having. Are you
I think
having difficulty hearing?
it helps if you turn off the camera if the connectivity isn't great, Dr. Bhaskar. Maybe turn it off and then thanks.
Why don't we come back to you in just a moment? Salvatore, ADIO is at the forefront of foreign investments in the UAE. How are you promoting investments in fintech locally? What trends are you seeing? And do you see Israeli technology companies and fintech companies beginning to enter the local market?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Dorian. At the Abu Dhabi Investment Office, we're really looking at attracting any company, either a foreign company looking to expand into Abu Dhabi or local companies looking to grow in Abu Dhabi. And we're looking across different sectors. But fintech really is one of the areas that we are focusing on among different areas within financial service. We see the trends in the Middle East really mapping the trends kind of globally, right? So we have cryptocurrencies, blockchain technologies, digital payments, even like more kind of niche things like crowdfunding. And we are having an ecosystem that's working really closely together. So, with Dr. Bhaskar at ADGM and his clients there, with the government regulators, we're making sure that we are all like interconnected and that we're focusing on how do we build out the strategy, how do we give the proper incentives, the building, of an innovation platform so that people can come in and really grow and then be successful in their businesses, and also then have the end users benefiting as well. So in addition to the regulatory area, we're focusing on building out the ecosystem, making sure that we are working together to promote like a one Abu Dhabi approach, and then also making sure that we're able to look at the entire menu of options that companies are able to take advantage of to really be successful in Abu Dhabi, and then also looking specifically case by case at disruptive technologies and new innovations that are coming through and seeing how we can respond to that. What's really great about Abu Dhabi in comparison to some other areas is just the speed at which we're able to innovate and the kind of individualized attention that we're able to give to things. In the past few months since we signed the Abraham Accords, we've been very excited about that, and we've talked with dozens and dozens of Israeli companies, just like we talk with companies from all over the world. And so we are excited to look at some in this space and see what will come. So we're excited to welcome any Israeli companies to Abu Dhabi.
Great. Dr. Bhaskar, are you back with us now?
Can you hear me now?
Perfectly. Thank you.
Fantastic. My apologies. So, as I was just saying, we are definitely very, very interested in developing the ecosystem. So, before I comment on and try and answer your question whether the ecosystem is working, let me throw some numbers and some perspectives at you. At
Please.
this moment, we have got more than 280 tech startups that I've licensed in ADGM, out of which I think about 110 have been non-equity funded and supported by Hub 71. I believe we've got just a shade around 20 venture capital funds. Besides this, you have Mubadala Ventures, you have ADQ, and of course, Salvatore has mentioned about the other financial and non-financial support that we provide from an investments perspective, as well as funding what I would call as the startups. Besides this, the funds that we have got, whether you're talking about ADIO, ADIC, Mubadala, etc., have been also in themselves been investing in the venture capital and alternative asset space now for 25 years now. So let's put it in this way: this kind of fiscal and support and the great advantage that we have from our colleagues from audio. This is all just enabling these things to happen. So what did we do? And you heard from Gabby in the previous session that we've been active in the fintech space for some time, but not too long. We are actually a tech startup as well, in a way. We just celebrated our 5th year, so we're growing at breakneck speed. Very, very active fintech jurisdiction, perhaps the second most active fintech regulatory jurisdiction in the world after the UK. We have got pretty much all the various elements in place, Reg Lab, digital banking, perhaps the most and institutionally deep crypto and virtual asset place. So is this working? To try and answer your question, I would say that yes. We have the world's first purely digital trade finance bank. We have now approved 5 virtual asset exchanges, broker-dealers, etc., etc. And we are so comfortable that we no longer even talk about virtual assets, as in, yeah, any asset, come in, have fun. We treat it exactly like any other piece. And finally, let's talk about the number of people. So we host Fintech Abu Dhabi, which for that little problem of COVID, we had to do virtually, but I believe about 20,000 people rocked up, virtually, of course. But to answer your question, yes, the ecosystem is definitely working. And the plans that we have got, oh yes, absolutely.
It's very good to hear. First of all, let me just say that if the other speakers would like to jump in, feel free to, and I invite the audience to present questions. I see we have a growing audience, including people like Gal Sheffer, and people who are doing a lot between the UAE and Israel. Let me turn now to Tali Zingher. Tali is not just 10 years ago about how great it will be when there are direct flights. Tali is really one of the veterans of Israel-UAE trade, having worked in Dubai for over a decade and having a startup here. Tali, can you share with us your view on how the climate has changed in the wake of the Abraham Accords? If you would you be able to give a prediction for us your fintech by the end of this year? Tali.
Sure, thank you. It's really a pleasure to be on this panel with good friends and respected colleagues. So thank you for having me. I think that there has been a climate shift that happened overnight upon the announcement of the Abraham Accords. I think we've seen it, and I think it's been very, moving and also eye-opening. I think that for Israeli companies in the fintech space, there's this amazing perfect storm of timing. 10 years ago, it would have been very difficult to find the right collaborations between the Israeli tech ecosystem and the fintech space and the UAE ecosystem. But the evolution of the ecosystem in the UAE, where you have over 160 fintech startups in the UAE alone, you have a 70% quarter-over-quarter deal growth in investment in the fintech landscape in the MENA region, even Q1 2021 to Q4 2020. There's a lot of activity. 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, it would have been very difficult to get a customer in Kuwait to make a mobile payment. And the number of payment platforms, the comfort of the customer with online payments, whether it's mobile or otherwise, has evolved. And that came in parallel with massive regulatory shifts and opening. The ADGM is on the forefront of this space. We all know that. But other countries in the region have also been trying to lead this space. And I think anybody in the fintech space knows that it's very much regulatory driven. So if you are in a space that's regulatory driven and you have such a willing regulator, you can really make progress quite quickly. So I think for Israeli companies, there's an opportunity to scale up their solutions and find the right partners to leverage that regulatory flexibility. Another thing I think is really important, that if we look at where there's room for fintech innovation, emerging markets has a long way to go, and they're leapfrogging established markets. The UAE, Abu Dhabi in particular, is uniquely positioned to enable startups to have their technologies reach those markets. And if you look at the fintech startups in the region and in the UAE in particular, they're already active in the region. Anywhere that's a 3 to 4 hour flight, And so for Israeli companies to find the right partners, either through financial institutions or local startups, and then leverage that flexibility, I think the potential is exponential. And it's different from the traditional markets Israeli fintech companies have been focused on. So that's where there's a brand new opportunity.
Great. Well, I see we have a growing audience of listeners. I invite you to ask questions. I see people who know the fintech space quite well and do a lot between the UAE and Israel. People like Justine's William. Feel free to present questions. Next question is for Dr. Sabah. In your opinion, what is the best way for an Israeli company, for example, to think about entering the Emirati market and the Gulf more broadly, especially in the fintech space? Dr. Sabah?
Sure. So first, for those of you who might not know, OurCrowd is a fintech platform, right? And we are in the process of applying to ADGM. So the question, as with any market entry, whether you go with a partner or not is not so much the issue as make sure you have the expertise. OurCrowd didn't come in with a partner. What OurCrowd decided to do is hire a team from the region itself, starting with myself. So there are pros and cons to going either way. But as with any geographic expansion, or new market entry, I should say, it always makes sense to make sure you have that expertise somewhere with you, be it a partner, be it an employee. That's more of a commercial decision, and there's enough support, in particular from ADIO, from ADGM, from the IFC. If you look at, just ADIO's, if you go to their website, they have a whole slew of information that makes it extremely easy to understand the market, understand how to come in. Same with both of the main financial centers, the ADGM and the IFC. So, there's a lot of information to start there. Just make sure you have the experience. And just one thing to note, if you show up with empty suitcases, money does not fly down from the sky.
That's absolutely true. Actually, my next question is along these lines. It's a question from the audience, from Gal Sheffer. Gal writes, it's very important to have boots on the ground in the UAE. You can't just show up with suitcases, as they say. But many of the founders of companies are not able to be here full time. What advice would you give those founders? I'm going to ask this question to Salvatore. You work so much with foreign companies that are coming here. How should a company think about the resources required on the ground in order to succeed?
Yeah, I think very similar to Israel, we say that in Abu Dhabi, a company has to instantly be global, right? I mean, we're under no impression that our markets, either of these markets, are large enough to have a company only be focused on this part of the world. And so we are really trying to see how can Abu Dhabi be a base for companies not only in the Middle Eastern region, but also across the world. We have a lot of companies that are interested in East Africa and South Asia, but prefer to have their team and maybe their senior executives being in Abu Dhabi. So we're really open to any kind of approach that a company can take. Right now with Israel, as of I think last week, I know Tali and yourself are on these flights. It's very easy to go between Abu Dhabi and Israel, but it's similarly easy to go to almost anywhere in the world. We're within a 4-hour flight of the world. And so we really do like to have companies that are using Abu Dhabi as a base, that are using the ADGM and our other areas to really address the global concerns of their company, not only the Abu Dhabi based ones. And then we are here to support that and to really find ways that we can incentivize companies to stay and to grow and to produce solutions here in Abu Dhabi that can be exported globally.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting. Go ahead, Tali, please.
If I can add, I think that specifically in the fintech sector, I think there is an opportunity to hire local teams and find local talent that can help you reach those markets. So maybe the founder doesn't have to relocate, but you can find senior management and folks that can reach that 4-hour flight circumference that Salvatore pointed out from the UAE. So I think that founders, could find the support for hiring that local talent to reach the regional market, which would be better reached out of Abu Dhabi anyway.
Yeah, it's worth noting that for those who spend time in the region, the UAE really is the I think, unrivaled trade center and financial center for the entirety of the region, whether that's the greater Middle East. It is really a hub for South Asia, for East Africa, and the transportation links here are just phenomenal. Whether it's Emirates Airlines in particular, but also Etihad, you really have an opportunity for a lot of things to get done here. Along those lines, and we do see a lot of people coming to set up businesses in the country. I'm curious, perhaps I'll ask Dr. Dasgupta, what foreign countries account for most of the activity at ADGM? To the extent you can paint a company establishing a local company or establishing a local operation as foreign, where are people coming from? Is it the UK? Is it Europe? Is it South Asia? Is it Israel? Where are you seeing the greatest number of people being drawn from?
I think, look, this is going to sound weird because I'm going to try and answer it in a completely different way.
Okay.
What people don't quite realize what Abu Dhabi is, and frankly, it was a bit of a eye-opener for me as well. And I'm a guy who sort of spent most of his career working in banking as well as government in London, which considered to be the capital of the world. But a couple of examples that I gave is that if there was a question about being on the ground. Yes, being on the ground is going to be required, but of course, COVID has got issues. But don't worry. We are here, we are patient, and we are here for the long term. If you sit in Cafe Nero in Galleria Mall for 2 hours, you will be walking past you. You know what? It's a good place to be in. But to go back to your answer, when you're talking about liquidity pools of that scale and nature, it is not just talking about Abu Dhabi. We access and are able to influence from a fiscal, monetary, trade basis globally. So let me try and give you a couple of other stats. The UAE has got one of the world's largest networks of bilateral investment treaties and double tax treaty networks. This is the place where those discussions happen. This is where you have the economic attaches. This is the place where the embassies are active. So when you're talking about that kind of level, I mean, Dr. Sabah would know much better. We can literally turn on a dime. This is a country which has literally turned on a dime 40, 50 years back. It completely transformed. And about 10, 15 years back, it has again transforming from a based economy. So to answer your question, yes, absolutely. Pretty much any country that you can think, we have got some connections and trade and business with them.
A very easy jurisdiction in which to do business. Go ahead, please.
If I can just add something. I mean, coming at it from the business point of view, and Gal, sorry for not getting back to you, but I will. But coming at it from the business point of view, one of the things people sometimes are surprised about is our residency requirements are very open. You have people from all over the world living in the UAE, and having access to people from all those different markets are in this market with you is what I have found from the investment and business side. One of the strongest parts of the framework. So there's regulatory and so on and legal. But if you want to deal with India, you don't have to go to India. There's a big community of Indian business people here. There's a big community from all the countries that surround us and further abroad. And I think that melting pot of actual people, business people, entrepreneurs who are looking to do business and have experience in their home countries is an interesting advantage that exists because of the UAE's very open visa and work system.
The next question is from the audience, and I'd like to give it to Salvatore. The question's from Justine Zwerling, who's head of primary markets at the London Stock Exchange Group in Israel, one of the founders of the UAE Israel Business Council. Justine asks, these are amazing developments. What do you see the landscape looking like a year from now, Salvatore, specifically vis-a-vis Israel and the UAE?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think a year ago, we wouldn't have thought that any of this would be possible in terms of the Abraham Accords. I also like to tell people about Abu Dhabi that what you might know about the Emirates isn't wrong. It's likely just old because there's so much that's changing. Like Dr. Bhaskar said, ADGM is only 5 years old, and is now one of the leading areas in fintech. So I think I think it will only go up. Abu Dhabi is really one of the few places in the world that you can be genuinely optimistic. I've been here for over a decade now, and the amount of change has been incredible. I think we'll see more clear regulation. I think we'll see more innovative companies coming in, both growing from domestically, some companies that are originating in the UAE, but also foreign companies that we will be attracting through the incentives that we offer at the Abu Dhabi Investment Office, and the non-financial incentives. And then number three, I think that the ecosystem will continue to build. I think that the relationships that we have within the different government entities that work together will continue to deepen, and that will only make it easier for companies to enter the market, for them to be understood, for their feedback to be listened to. And so, I think in anything in the UAE, especially in these times of COVID, it would be silly to say what we think it could look like. But I'm incredibly optimistic, and I'm excited to see what it will be.
Let me ask that question to Tali Zingher. Tali, you've long had a venture capital company that does weight loss and wellness here in the Gulf, and I know you're advising a number of Israeli companies who are now entering the region, the Gulf, in a more focused way. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you're one of the veterans of this trade route. Where do you see things in a year?
A year is a short timeline. It's maybe an Israeli long timeline, but it's a very short timeline for the UAE, even though things do move rapidly. I think where we're going to head is more partnerships and kind of the cross-pollination of the kind that Dr. Sabah and OurCrowd are doing, and that's going to help both ecosystems grow more rapidly. So I think we will see joint investments between UAE and Israeli entities, and I think that fintech being a really high priority space globally. And again, I think the real interest will be in emerging markets. I don't think there will be a lot of Israeli companies that will come to the UAE en route to the US market, but I think they will. I think they'll find really willing partners locally, whether it's local banks and financial institutions or startups and entrepreneurs that have already done the thinking about how do you operate in a low resource environment, like they are in the rest of the emerging markets, and how are you able to tackle those 4 billion people that are right around the corner from the UAE that are a massive growth opportunity in the fintech space. And so I think we'll see joint ventures. I think we'll see startups pairing up and merging with one another to be able to tackle that opportunity.
Tali, a follow-on question to you. You've seen UAE people are used to addressing markets outside the UAE. That's the very basis of this market. What can Israelis learn from the way the technology ecosystem operates here? And what can Emiratis, in your opinion, learn from the way Israelis have addressed similar challenges?
I think that the biggest thing was a time zone shift. Right, you stand in the airport in Dubai, pre-COVID days, but even now, or in Abu Dhabi, and the flights are going to totally different destinations than Ben Gurion Airport and even than JFK Airport. It's a time zone shift. And I think that for so long, the Israeli ecosystem has been focused on the US and Europe, and then maybe more recently, China and Asia. But I think there's a swath of time zones, frankly, that are out of the frame. And I think that the biggest thing that Israeli entrepreneurs can learn is what does it really mean to think globally, not just think Western. And I think that will open up new markets as well as a new mindset. And I think the diversity of audience and partners and entrepreneurs based in the UAE can help access that. Now, as for what can the UAE learn from the Israeli ecosystem, I think the Israeli ecosystem has just a lot more of a track record in producing products and advanced technology solutions in the fintech space that are able to partner and serve needs primarily in Western markets. So I think that there's a really nice compatibility that can help scale those ideas that have relevance and kind of learn from the experience and the sophistication in the Israeli market. So I think there's a really nice compatibility in this partnership.
If I may, I want to put the same question to Dr. Sabah about what two markets can learn from each other. You're entering this space quite quickly. With OurCrowd, you've had, I presume, innumerable discussions with your colleagues about what the advantages and strengths are of each market. What is your perspective on what the two countries can learn from one another in this area?
On the one hand, don't be afraid to fail. On the other hand, don't be afraid to be patient. I'll let you take which side is which.
I think the patience is definitely something the Israelis need to learn. I can say that we're among friends here in this closed session. Patience is not one of the virtues of the Israeli market, but that kind of impatience also leads to a lot of and kind of rapid transformation. So I always like to say, look at a market and accept the good and the bad.
I wasn't making judgment. I'm just saying, as Sally said, it's complementary, right? Absolutely. At one point, too much patience is you need to also learn to take quick action and not be afraid to fail. So it's equal.
We have a comment here in the session from Junaid Kassir saying that it seems the Middle East has become the center of all activity. This is an amazing and pleasant development. Certainly we see this during COVID times when the UAE has, especially Dubai, has remained open and has become really a center of financial services activity throughout the region. Thank you for your comment, Junaid. Salvatore, one more question for you. I think there's a sense that technology is really the focus of ADIO. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I'd be interested in you commenting on, what is the strategy of the UAE? What are the kinds of business that Abu Dhabi in particular, but the country itself wants to bring here? Is it manufacturing activity? Is it technology? Is it financial services? What are the key or focus sectors for ADIO in attracting foreign businesses and facilitating their entry?
Yeah, so I think there's two answers to that. The more specific one is that we're really focused on a shift towards knowledge economies, right? So looking at sectors that will bring in high skilled talent that will take advantage of the talent that we have here and bring in more of like a diversified impact onto the economy. So really anything that has innovation at its core is something that we are looking at supporting. The second part of the answer, though, is that we're really playing the role of a market catalyzer rather than a market maker. So we're less interested now as a government in our economic development strategy of like picking winners before they compete and trying to say like that we're focusing specifically on X, Y, or Z. And instead, we want to say, if a company believes there's a strategic reason to be in Abu Dhabi, that they have a vision, then we will enable that to be successful. And that's why we do our financial incentives on a rebate model where we don't take any equity, we don't take any IP ownership. We're completely non-dilutive, which supports the founders, but it also then protects the country in that we are, not throwing money at new ideas, and instead we are, just accelerating or catalyzing the initiatives that are excited to begin here. So I think it's, the short version is that we're very focused on knowledge economies, innovation. A lot of that can include technology, but we're also focused, for example, on tourism and looking at new ecotourism solutions. And so really any company that's looking to expand Abu Dhabi, we're happy to have discussions with.
Okay, well, thank you very much. As we said, we're going to stop before the top of the hour. Many people are fasting, I presume. Thank you very much for your participation in this event. Tali Zingher, Managing Director of Blue Laurel, which advises businesses on entry strategies to the Gulf and to Israel, and CEO of Dowsat. Salvatore Lavallo, Acting Head of Foreign Direct Investment at the Abu Dhabi Investment Office, or ADIO. Dr. Bhaskar Dasgupta, Director of Business Development at ADGM. And Dr. Sabah al-Binali, Venture Partner and Head of the Gulf Region at OurCrowd. Thank you very much. Johnny, over to you if you're with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dorian, for moderating such a wonderful panel. It was very moving, and as I said earlier, to have people in the same room, or be it virtual, looking at these new opportunities from this new friendship. And I think we have so much in common culturally and with every aspect. And I think this new relationship can benefit not just the region, but the whole world. And looking forward to fruitful relationships and to working with you all in the years to come. Thank you very much to our esteemed panelists, to Salvatore, to Dr. Sabah, to Tali, and to Dr. Bhaskar. We really appreciate you being with us today and for sharing your knowledge and insights with us, and looking forward to working with you again. If you can stay with